Hi, I'm Gabe.
I'm Randi.
And I'm Jaime.
And we're back for more of NARAL's The Morning After. So we've been out for a little bit of a early summer break.
Hiatus. Yeah.
Big news, John Kasich, it's official, is a presidential candidate. He's
Shocker.
the sour 16th, not sweet 16th.
Definitely not sweet.
So he had a big event to announce that. We protested outside, got some nice media out of that. What do we think about the Kasich presidential candidacy so far?
I read this article about him going to, I think it was in Philadelphia, and he went and spoke at it was like a manufacturing plant firm, place. And so basically the men had to come in to the break room and listen to him talk. And so they go in to listen to him talk. And just the whole time it was like pulling teeth and just awkward. And they didn't really have any questions for him. And he tried to go into how, my dad was a mailman. And so I know. It's like, really, John Kasich, you're worth millions. And so you
like
came
20 million or something like that. He came out with it the other day.
Exactly.
Yeah. He had to release, financial statements for the first time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was
and these
so
guys
hilarious.
are on their lunch break. They're like, why are we here?
Why exactly? Why are we here listening to you? I have no questions for you. It was just terrible.
Well, and he gave him the one guy, they talk about like, what's your goal? And he's like, I'd like to buy a house. And so then Kasich gives him a lecture about how he shouldn't be spending all of his money on fishing gear and all that stuff. He should be saving it. Like, how the heck does he not know that this guy is not already doing that?
Yeah.
I know better than you. I'm going to lecture you on how to save money.
Right.
Like, what the heck, dude? Like,
exactly.
Was totally condescending, Kasich.
Yeah.
Like you have any idea of what this guy's experience is and how he's trying to buy a house. You could go and buy 10 houses.
Yeah.
But this is Kasich as we've known him for several years as Ohio's governor, where there's no script. It's whatever comes to the top of his mind, even if he's in the middle of a speech. Yeah, his speech was his speech was terrible. The he needs a teleprompter was like the official reaction from the national media. It's, dear Lord, this man needs a teleprompter. You couldn't find his main talking point.
At one point, his sentence was so long that if you actually listen to it from the beginning to the end, he actually said that he was alive during the Civil War.
What?
He did this whole America can be great because we've always, thrived through struggle. And he started with the Civil War, and he's like, in the Civil War and the Depression and blah, blah, like all these like different points in time. And I think like the latest one was, of course, 9/11, because we've got to bring up 9/11 whenever we can. And he's like, I've lived through all of them, and I can tell you. And it's like,
live through all of them.
Live through all of them. Okay, you even forgot where you started this sentence 5 minutes ago. So
right.
But yeah, it was a complete disaster. And it's also kind of interesting on a reproductive rights kind of issue that Kasich was the 16th president, and he signed 16th person to declare for presidency, and he signed 16 different anti-choice laws into effect in Ohio since he became governor. It was nice kind of, hey, look, 16 and 16. Definitely a sour 16.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's crazy.
So it really does kind of look like he is in the same vein as Scott Walker and Chris Christie. Definitely a model of the Republican national platform.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so we'll get to see him tomorrow night up on stage in Cleveland.
Yes,
Oh, yes.
he just made the cutoff.
Barely.
Bottom of this barrel of monkeys.
He is at the bottom of the barrel. He made the cutoff and beat out Rick Perry. And so Rachel Maddow was talking about it on her show last night. She was kind of going hard for Rick Perry, actually, even though she said herself, she's not a Rick Perry partisan.
They all want Rick Perry.
They want another oops. Come on. They want another
We have Donald Trump. We don't need Rick Perry. I mean, he's got it covered.
They've got Santa Claus.
I know.
And they're saying like, oh, we want the Tooth Fairy too.
Exactly. Come on now.
Santa Claus.
Yeah, I mean, they're all gonna say crazy stuff, so we don't need all of them to be in it. And technically, even though everyone's saying that all of these people's campaigns are effectively dead, which I think actually, well, let's get into the polling, then we'll talk more about Rick Santorum and his campaign. But anyway, so she was talking about, the polling and how, first of all, a lot of people were very upset. The candidates obviously very upset that they were going to use the national polling to as the only determining factor for who's going to be on the stage or not. And she interviewed a guy who was a polling director for Marist polling, and they stopped asking the question because he was like, you cannot use these polls. He didn't want the polls to be used for this purpose because it's not, a clear-cut scientific like process to say, because a lot of these polls have like a margin of error of like from anywhere from 3 points to like 5 or 6 points.
And most of these guys have between 3 and 5 points.
Exactly. So to say that one person is over the other any given day, you can't really say that. It could change. And so Fox News had previously said that they were going to use the latest 6 polls to determine who was going to be in the top 10. And so when it came time to do it, they actually only used the last 5, and they kicked out the NBC poll because in the NBC poll, Kasich and Perry were like really close. I think it was only like maybe like 0.4, 0.5 like difference between them.
Tied,
yeah.
And they cherry picked.
Exactly. And so without the NBC poll, their average was, I believe Kasich was at 5 and Perry was at 3. So 2. She was saying, so that means that Kasich is doubled Perry, even though it's like 2 to 5.
Still within he's
doubling him in numbers,
right.
But when most of the people only have, like I said, single digits, then it really matters. But so that kicked Rick Perry out. But she was just saying that she felt like they did that so that it would be less likely for people to say that they're showing preference to one over the other, because in that poll it was 2 to 5. So it looks like there is more of a split between them, even though, like we said, with the margin of error, it's really not. But that's what they use so that it could look more like, Kasich was ahead, and so he deserves to be on the stage other than Rick Perry.
See, this is the problem with the National Republican Party right now, is there's no leadership. Somebody needs to show preference, and they need to start weeding these guys out. They've got 17 candidates. You can't put them all up on. Putting up 10 on stages
is
going
to
be ridiculous enough.
And there's nobody to make these decisions beyond Fox News. There is.
Fox News is in charge of the Republican Party.
They are. And this shows it.
It's like they're just going to be out and open about it now.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting too. I mean, I think people who don't know Kasich's history with Fox News would be like, well, why would, Fox News prefer Kasich? Because he runs as this moderate, not crazy Republican, although we all know who he really is.
Yeah.
But, he used to be a show host. He used to be a commentator on Fox News. So that's, they picked one of their own over another candidate. I mean, it can't be much more obvious than
somewhere
that.
In John Kasich's house, he still has some Fox News business cards.
Oh, yes. Buried in a drawer somewhere, for sure.
Exactly.
Well, somebody this morning said that basically it was 50 people were the difference between like Kasich and Perry. So 50 people polled could have changed their mind, and it would have been the other way.
Well, it's the only people who still pick up telephones anymore.
That's true.
Yeah.
Nobody answers the phone, so how effective can a poll be?
Exactly. But it is going to probably, even though technically they can stay in the race however long they want until they're kicked out, it is probably going to effectively end a lot of them. And what I was going to say about Rick Santorum really quick is just that already his campaign manager, his Iowa director, and his his digital director have all left the campaign.
I heard that they left for his own PAC.
Yeah, they went to go work for the PAC to try to see if they can.
But they don't have any hard dollars to pay these people anymore.
No,
pretty much.
So, and this is for Santorum, who 4 years ago came in second to Romney. He was the last man standing against Mitt Romney.
And now he's not even in the.
Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't look like Santorum's going to stick around much longer. You've got people like
Lindsey Graham, Carly Fiorina, Pataki.
Right.
Yeah.
Dr. Ben Carson, who
he's in. He's in the top 10.
He's in the top 10, but I mean, I have no idea who this guy is.
Well, it was interesting though. MSNBC and NBC did a little focus group online, actually not online, of people talking about them supporting Trump, because they were trying to figure out who is Trump's base? Like, what are these people like? Because we're like, who are these crazy people? And when they went around, one of the things they did was they went around the circle. It was like, if Trump wasn't there for you to pick, who would you pick? Mm-hmm. I would say, if I'm remembering it right, it was like 80% of them were like, I think my second choice would be Ben Carson. It was really odd because, I don't know who, like, I know a little bit about him. I've known that, you know, he's had a couple things but like, it's just really interesting that of that, you know, little group of, and it was, you know, hardcore Republican partisans, some kind of, I mostly vote Republicans, and some pure independents who swing either way in this group. And like 80% of them, their second choice was Ben Carson. So if you're making an argument for anybody being hurt by Donald Trump still being in it, according to that group of people, it's actually Ben Carson. So it's going to be interesting to learn more about him.
Because he's not, I mean, he's always been polling in the top 10, but not that high. Like, he's not polling higher than Jeb Bush or Scott Walker or Mark Rubio. So it's kind of weird that they would pick him, but he's not number 2 right now.
No. Well, it just kind of shows the establishment. Like, we don't want somebody who's a candidate, because Ben Carson's never been a candidate before. Yeah. He's never been in office before. It just kind of follows that, I'm going to pick this guy who's not been in elective office, and then my second choice is going to be this other guy who's not. Because
somebody who's never done it should totally govern the whole country. That makes complete sense.
It's kind of like that argument of, I want to vote for somebody like me. Like, no, I am not qualified to be president of the United States. I do not want somebody like me running this country. I want somebody much smarter and more experienced
and
than
that
me.
Also just shows kind of like that, like, such egotism to think that somebody like me should run the country. Like, no, please have several seats. Nobody like you should be running the country.
No,
you've never governed. You don't know anything about form. And the whole thing is, they like him because he was like such a successful business. He's filed bankruptcy several times. He only got started doing the real estate because his dad had money. And so, but then when you see them talking, they're like, oh, because he's self-made. But I'm like, no. He's even the things you think you know about him are not true, and you don't even know that much about him to begin with.
And then he talked about the sanctity of his marriage when he's had 3 or 4 wives at this point. Yeah. I'm like, dude, just
please
like you
said,
have several seats.
Yeah, like it's not making. Again, I don't know why I'm expecting people to make logical sense. They don't make logical sense. It's just craziness.
Well, also not making logical sense. And talking about the crazy methodology, apparently a robo-poll from an organization called Gravis Marketing. They just released this today. Donald Trump, it got huge support. It's like a third of the respondents said they like the Donald. But then the surprising thing is that in second place, according to this, admittedly not scientific poll, is John Kasich, and he's got 15% of the poll responses. Picking him amongst the people in New Hampshire ww respond to this robopoll. So Kasich, either because he's new or because he's maybe because he's a governor, and they are starting to hear things about him.
He also spent $3 million on TV ads in New Hampshire.
True.
Yeah.
So if he didn't actually start moving,
that's more of a sign of a traditional, traditional campaign.
Yeah.
That apparently is giving him a bump. So that we have 2 kind of theories, and one is that Fox News is engineering this, but then the other one is that there's a bit of a Kasich bump right now. Everybody knows Rick Perry from years back.
Yeah.
But nobody outside of Ohio knows John Kasich. So we'll see how they do tomorrow night in Cleveland amongst the 10. My prediction is that we're not going to hear anything too wildly explosive out of the mouths of anybody except for Donald Trump, because if there's 10 people up on stage, you're taking the amount of time that they're going to be actually debating and dividing it by 10. And it's such a tiny fraction where you don't want the only thing out of your mouth to be explosive and destroy you, but you only get a couple sentences because the entire night is split 10 ways. So
exactly.
I don't think we're going to, have huge fireworks.
Well, Trump said that he's not going to he's going to be nice at the debate. He's not going to be attacking.
He's in the lead. He has no reason to do,
True.
I don't think he doesn't need to attack to be crazy, though. I mean, anything he says pretty much coming out of his mouth is ridiculous.
Because now he's saying, "Oh, I've never debated before, so this is my first time going into this." But hey, man, apparently that's what people like about you, is that you've never done any of this before, and they eating it up. So
I'm sure he's debated before. It's always been with his own employees, though.
I thought you were about to say it his own head.
That's also very possible.
Yeah.
Oh, but I mean, speaking of crazy crap out of various Republicans, did you hear Jeb Bush say that $500 million in funding for women's health services was way too much money? We didn't need that.
We don't need that.
We don't need that much money for women's health services. It wasn't even like in the guise of like, we don't need that money going to Planned Parenthood. It was, this is too much money for women's health services.
Even though we're half the country.
Yeah, half the country. And there's still like, I think it's like 2.1 million women in the state of Ohio who are in need of publicly funded family planning services. So if there's that many, in Ohio, how many are there across the country? So yeah, that whole little he's tried to clarify it since then. I was like, oh no, I meant Planned Parenthood, but no, actually,
you didn't say
that's not what you said. You
yeah.
said there's too much money for women's health services. So you can try to roll that back whenever you want, but we know what you said.
Exactly.
And so just to complete that transition, so since we've been talking last, there's been a huge brouhaha about Planned Parenthood. A bunch of heavily edited videos were released by
Center for Medical Progress,
right, which is a front group for Lila Rose, who has her own organization dedicated to trying to trap people into making statements that they don't believe in. So heavily edited videos. We don't need to go into all of it. Everybody's heard about this. It's been national news.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing is attacks like this from people like Jeb Bush, from the entire U.S. Senate, who proposed to defund the organization. And many people then speaking up and saying, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Planned Parenthood helped me. Planned Parenthood provides care for low-income women all across the country. 1 in 5 women use this service. And so there was the vote that got brought forward to the U.S. Senate. There was some really terrific speeches, including our star of the week, Elizabeth Warren, Senator Warren from Massachusetts, who stepped up. She said, this follows many efforts to block funding for Planned Parenthood to apply restrictions to abortion. Even recently this year, they tried to stall legislation that would help human trafficking victims.
Yeah.
And they refused to pass this bill that everybody supports, and it's clear that this, is necessary in America now to try and shove in some abortion restrictions. Yeah. So, it's been this ongoing agenda, and this is just another step in it to try and block women from having access to abortion providers. But they did it in the dumbest way possible by going after the provider of, life-saving breast and cervical cancer screenings, the provider of contraception, the provider of health education. Her quote was, "This is not a vote to defund abortion. It's a vote to defund cancer screenings." So Elizabeth Warren did a great job. The vote failed, so defunding did not pass the U.S. Senate.
Although the majority of senators voted for it.
Yeah.
Right. They didn't get the 60
votes that they needed. So the majority still did vote for it, but they did not hit the 60 votes. And I think that really shows actually what the plan was for these videos all along.
Exactly.
And when the first video came out, it was actually the next day or the day after that we found out that the video release was not a surprise to members of Congress. Republican anti-choice members of Congress had seen all of this footage before and were actually part of, the release. So this was a coordinated campaign between this false organization that actually, according to some of the reports, probably broke laws to create this front company to investigate undercover, creating completely false videos, taking stuff out of context, and then all that stuff being taken up by Congress to push this vote to defund Planned Parenthood. So it's not some, random person out there working all on his own in his basement. This is a coordinated attack on abortion providers and Planned Parenthood in particular. And so, just like all of the other times, these are not aimed at abortion or any of those things. It's aimed at birth control. It's aimed at cancer screenings under the guise of abortion. And it's completely ridiculous notion that we're defunding abortion because federal money and actually state money in Ohio cannot go towards providing abortion care. And that was where Elizabeth Warren was coming. This is not defunding abortion. We did that with the Hyde Amendment in 1976.
Yes.
Right. So, we don't give federal funds for abortion. So by defunding Planned Parenthood, you're doing absolutely nothing to defund abortion. You were only taking away basic health care for women. And, frankly, we need to reinstate the Hyde Amendment, but that's another discussion for another day. But we need to repeal the Hyde Amendment. That's what I was asking for.
Yeah.
But
I know women always talking about they need their pap smears and their mammograms and their birth control. We all know we're just out here trying to get a free abortion.
I think it was Larry Wilmore last night. His point, he's like, the point I guess they're trying to make is that a woman's coming into Planned Parenthood for a breast exam and they accidentally roll into getting an abortion. This completely ridiculous notion that I'm going to come in for a pap smear and end up getting an abortion at Planned Parenthood, which is just so completely out of the realm of reality that it's just like you said earlier.
You won't believe how many times that happens. It's crazy.
So yeah, it's and it doesn't just stop at the federal level. No. It goes down into the state level, where we've already seen in Ohio, after a rally last week put on by Ohio Right to Life, a bill introduced to defund Planned Parenthood at the state level as well. Right. A couple of years ago, they already did this reprioritization, as they called it, to take away money from family planning providers and Planned Parenthood from the reproductive health and wellness program. But now they're going after all of the other funding that they get through the Department of Health here in Ohio. So, that's not just stopping there. It's coming here. So, we're going to defund an infant mortality program, Healthy Moms, Healthy Babies. We're going to defund breast and cervical cancer screenings. We're going to defund HIV/AIDS testing, which Indiana actually has figured out doesn't really work that well. They actually closed down like the only Planned Parenthood in a county in southern Indiana, and have seen an HIV and hepatitis outbreak of epic proportions down there. So, other states have tried these things and they've failed miserably because this is all preventive health care.
And then their taxpayers pay for that failure.
Exactly. Yeah. We had to come back and pay for all that. But just the fact that they think we're going to take away your birth control, we're going to take away your pap smears, we're going to take away all this basic health care, and nobody's going to need an abortion anymore. That's completely ridiculous because guess what? Birth control actually stops unplanned pregnancies, and therefore, if you have more unplanned pregnancies, what's gonna happen?
Exactly.
So yeah,
and I wanted to talk more about the rally, but just to say that birth control. I feel like a lot of these politicians, these men, don't realize a lot of people who are not having sex or who don't have no plans to have sex with a man. Use birth control. I started using birth control when I was I think maybe 18 or 19. I was not having sex. I used birth control because I had endometriosis and just really, really, really heavy menstrual cycles, and just so it helped me out that way. And a lot of women use it for those purposes. So it's not just about stopping getting pregnant, which is obviously we need it for that purpose as well, but women use it for a lot of other things as well. And so you're trying to say that you're not going to be able to get this to help you with any other problems you might be having. So that's just ridiculous. Another thing that's also ridiculous is my good friend Bill Patman.
Good friend in air quotes.
I know, right? So at the rally that they had at the State House to talk about how we need to defund Planned Parenthood, and of course talking about how, and he's a Democrat from Cleveland, just basically talking about the Black Lives Matter, trying to hijack the meaning of the Black Lives Matter movement, saying that if they really wanted to protect Black lives, then they would be standing out in front of Planned Parenthood, because Planned Parenthood has killed so many Black babies. Planned Parenthood, like, really? Where? Okay, so first of all, once again, they never even stop to think about why women of color and why low-income women might need to have an abortion. They probably already have children. They need to go to Planned Parenthood because they don't have insurance to go somewhere else to pay for it. And also thinking about, where do they live? Do I want to bring a child up into this environment? Do I live in a violent environment? Are there good schools around? Am I able to get a job to be able to take care of you? Can I take time off from my job to be able to take care of you? There's a lot of things that go into deciding whether or not you're going to have a child. And just to say that, specifically for a Black man talking about Black women, it's like, again, keep everything that you wanted to say to yourself, write it down, and give it to your mom, your sister, your aunt, and your daughter, if that's how you feel about Black women, because that's how I feel about you. And so also taking into account, people just think, when they you show me the picture of the woman who was also at the rally with the baby and hands up, a little Black baby on a sign saying hands up, don't abort. Like, how offensive. And at the same time, and at the core of it, it's like, you don't give a about Black people and Black babies. You don't care about us at all. You just want to hijack this movement to say that, oh, look at those people, they don't care about life, they're killing their kids, whatever. And if you have your baby, you're a welfare queen, but if you don't, then you don't care about life. You can't win, because that's the whole dialogue they want to put forward. And he just said a lot of other things that I disagree with, but are not necessarily pertinent to this, so I won't go into everything about how I feel about him.
His solution is to defund their health care.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, you're a horrible human being for doing this, and I'm going to take away your access to a doctor.
Exactly. Wait,
what?
That makes tons of sense, right?
Yes.
Well, and just the fact, all of these campaigns that co-opt, from the billboards from the very beginning, where, that said stuff like, the most dangerous place for a, African-American baby is in the womb, and all these things. The notion that Black women cannot be trusted to make their own healthcare decisions. That Black women are committing genocide on the next generation of African American youth, and I don't even know. Like, and I don't have words.
On the flip side of it, you have them being sterilized in prison. So it's like, what is it? Do you want them to have babies, or you don't want them to have babies?
Only under my situation, and when I tell you that it's okay for you to have a baby. Yeah. So don't get pregnant when I don't want you to, but also don't have an abortion because I don't want you to do that either. So, do exactly what I tell you to do, and then maybe I won't hate you anymore or something.
Even though you will, you still will, but anyway. Yeah. It's ridiculous. Like, you cannot win, being a poor white woman or a Black and brown woman. They just put out all of these things about you to say that, why are you reproducing? Why are you getting abortions? Like, it's a lose-lose situation, and nobody even takes into account the entire situation. We don't live life in a vacuum. No. You don't decide to go, and where you decide to go to school, where you decide to purchase a house, if you can do those things. You don't just decide those out of a vacuum because, oh, I like the name of this street, or this school, they have a Chipotle next door, so I'm going to go. Like, no, even though that probably factors in. But that is, you don't decide those things in a vacuum. That's not how life works. But at the same time, it's like they see this, oh, they're selling baby parts, we need to defund them, which is not even true. No. But they put that out there as a reason to, now we're going to defund them. And, and how much are you getting paid for Black babies? Like, it's ridiculousness. And so that is why Bill Patman gets the walk of shame for this edition, because he's a ridiculous person. And I hope he probably will never watch this. I hope he will. I wish I could go up to him at the State House and say what I want to say, but can't do that. This wouldn't be very professional.
But I think you
hit it here.
I think you hit it on the head though, with the write what you want to write down and then show it to your mom or your sister. Like, exactly. Talk to. African American woman and see like
yes,
what they think about what you're saying. Go and
talk to your constituents and see what they really think about what you want to do, but you wouldn't dare.
No,
because you already know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. So, I mean, all of that press conference was ridiculous. You can go to, oh crap, my Mark Kobuck's blog. I can't remember the name of it right
Ohio
now.
Capital blog.
There it is, and watch all of the video from that if you really want to. I recommend doing it on an empty stomach, and maybe with a drink nearby. But you can definitely watch all of it. The auditor was there, the Secretary of State was there, Mary Taylor was there. She made a appearance for the first time. We haven't really seen her at any of these things before. I guess Kasich was too busy off in different states to actually do anything in Ohio. But yeah, it was an interesting time.
So the Patman attack on Ohio doctors is one form that we're seeing. Separately, but not entirely unrelated. In the Dayton area, there have been a series of attacks on doctors for the Wright State Physicians Group. These are doctors that are listed for the Women's Med Center as being associated with that abortion facility. And so they've been the target of
firing their neighborhoods.
A harassment campaign. They've been parking. The organization Created Equal, it's an anti-abortion group that is very vocal in Ohio, has been parking their trucks with the fetal remains, pictures on the side, and the names and the photos of the doctors that work for this group. And they've been parking the truck outside these doctors' homes, outside their offices, doing everything they can, sending postcards to the neighbors in these communities to attempt to get these doctors to stop working with one of the few remaining abortion providers in Ohio.
Yes. The only one in Dayton.
There's only one. Yeah, the only one in Dayton.
Right.
And the Miami Valley area.
Yeah. So this has been just a horrible campaign, and it's one of many, many ways that we're seeing, elected officials and anti-abortion groups working, if not hand in hand, then they're certainly standing side by side to try and attack the people who provide
they want violence.
Access.
They want violence towards
It's
them.
frightening. It's
well,
very frightening.
It didn't even stop with just those doctors. So once they started that campaign, they sent 200 letters out to every single OBGYN in that county and said, this is the campaign we're running against these other doctors. So if you want to enter into a contract with Dr. Haskell and the Women's Med Center of Dayton, we're going to do the same thing to you. So you might want to think twice about that. So, it didn't just happen with the doctors in this practice. And frankly, they went after the doctors not actually explicitly written into the contract. They went after it because it's like 10 doctors in this practice and only 2 of them were actually in the contract at that point.
Right.
So, they were going after doctors that weren't even associated with it at that point. So, it really was, flat out harassment, following them around, sending postcards, calling them the killers among us to your neighbors, driving the truck slowly around your neighborhood with big, headshots of you and fetal remains on the truck. And it does. I mean, so, Ohio Right to Life worked with Governor Kasich and the Ohio legislature to put into law the transfer agreements and the variance rules 2 years ago. Then, Created Equal, who Ohio Right to Life has endorsed. There's actually an endorsement from Mike Onadakis, the president of Ohio Right to Life, on Created Equal's website saying that he endorses the practices of this organization. So you've got Created Equal, who's endorsed by Ohio Right to Life, who got this bill passed, going around and then taking that and saying, well, then we're going to harass the crap out of these doctors until nobody wants to do anything anymore because they're scared for their safety and their family's safety.
Which they should be.
Yeah. And so it just shows this coordinated attack, just like at the federal level with these videos of all these organizations. They can try to say, well, those are, fringe organizations that we're not associated with, like they have in the past, but there are direct ties between all of these organizations and all of these politicians. And it just shows this coordinated attack that really is shutting down clinics in our state. Doctors are scared. And, and I mean, we've seen it a lot with the Planned Parenthood videos more recently. A lot of the rhetoric has changed and it is really scary because what happened when Dr. Tiller was killed in Kansas was that, the attorney general had investigated him over and over and over again. They had a very, very, very rabidly anti-choice attorney general in the state at that point. And so he investigated him.
This is the state of Kansas?
Kansas.
Okay.
And investigated him over to Dr. Tiller over and over again, and was always found not guilty, was always found unfounded. I mean, he never had done anything wrong, but they did these, investigations to investigate him, to make a story out of it. And, you get somebody who's, not quite mentally stable, not really thinking clearly. Mm-hmm. And, you start calling this person a baby killer and saying that he's getting away with it. And they've done investigations to see what he's doing wrong. And he always gets away with it. What's going to happen eventually is that something's going to boil over, and we've started to see it with this Planned Parenthood defunding vote too, with some of the more rabid anti-choice groups. So there was a blog comparing what they should do to what happened in The Godfather, like with taking them out already that we've seen. So, they've tried to defund Planned Parenthood and it didn't work. And there's all these videos showing all these bad things that didn't really happen. And, the rhetoric is just starting to get more scary again, kind of like leading up to Tiller.
Not okay. I mean, I don't know all the laws, surrounding that, so I don't claim to be an expert. But I thought, if you're putting stuff like that on your website, on your social media, basically to incite violence, how is that okay? I don't understand how, they wouldn't be stopped from doing that.
There've been a lot of those instances. I mean, there've been Target websites before where they've had like pictures of abortion providers like on targets that you'd use in a shooting range.
Yeah.
In the 90s, actually, when several providers were actually shot and bombed, there were several bombings and those kinds of things. If a provider was killed, they like X'd them out on the page, and
nothing done about that.
They sued, and unless it was like a direct threat, like you have to. There are several pieces of it, and like it has to be a direct threat to an individual, and they have to have like the means and a plan, and like it has to be. There's a really high bar for what we can do about it. It's the same thing with the right state stuff. It's harassment. I mean, anybody who looks at what's happening in Dayton is going to say it's harassment. They're harassing these people, but the legal definition of when you can step in and do something is very different than the general understanding of you're harassing me and you should be forced to stop.
Yeah.
So,
especially if the bus is in front of their house, I wouldn't think that's okay.
Well, and you also have to have law enforcement and upper levels of law enforcement that have an interest in stopping this.
Yeah.
And we don't in Ohio. We've got, Ohio Attorney General Mike DeWine, who, when these, videos were released, the first thing he said was, hey, I want to trigger an investigation on Planned Parenthood, even though, the Ohio Attorney General's office and the Department of Health, have records on Planned Parenthood's business. This isn't some organization that this is the first time they're dealing with.
Yeah.
So for DeWine to go completely outside of A, what the actual activities of an organization are in the state, and then B, to be outside of, what are the records of their business practices already, in possession by the state, to ignore all of that and just go for these cheap, political points and to try and, ride out a media cycle on this shows that he's interested in harassing Planned Parenthood. He's not interested in stopping these groups that are harassing other doctors. You have to have, some political interest in stopping this.
Exactly.
But it's not coming from Mike DeWine. It's not coming from John Kasich, who did the exact same thing. It's not coming from U.S. Senator Rob Portman, who voted to defund Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
There needs to be some, some spines by these people, but also that a turn in the correct direction to say, hey, these organizations have to tone down the rhetoric. They have to stop sending out their truth trucks. They have to stop harassing physicians.
Yeah. You can be, you can have your position and support your position without taking it to that level.
Yeah.
That they're taking it to.
But luckily, I mean, the truth trucks actually were started before the Department of Health actually came in and denied our existing variants.
They've been
application.
around for a while.
They've been so about a month ago now. Actually, a little over a month ago, Haskell finally heard back from his 2012 variants application from the Department of Health. So he applied for this in
mere 3 years.
2012. And they finally got back to him on his application and denied.
Which shows how important this was.
Oh yeah, I mean, they keep talking about how these transfer agreements and these variances are absolutely critical to protect patients' health. If they are absolutely critical to protect people's health, why is the Department of Health sitting on the application for 3 years? So yeah, obviously not at all important to patient health. Right. And so they ruled on his variance, and they denied his variance because he only had 2 doctors. He had 3 doctors in 2012, and then his 2013 and his 2014 applications only had 2 doctors. So ODH came back and said that we don't think 2 doctors is enough, although no doctors is enough because any patient's going to be put in an ambulance and driven to the hospital and gets whatever care she needs. So they gave him 30 days to reapply for a variance, and we're happy to report that he did find a 3rd doctor and did reapply. So he is reapplying, and we'll see what happens with the Department of Health this time. See if they wait another 3 years. Although now they can't wait 3 years because now we have this new law that was passed into.
Well, they can, and then it'll just be denied.
Yeah. So the budget that Kasich signed into law about a month ago now requires the Department of Health to act on these variance applications within 60 days, or that they are automatically denied. And what we know is the Department of Health has been sitting on these for years in some cases. So now we have to make sure that we're protecting these clinics and making sure the Department of Health rules and does their job rather than just sitting there and just allowing it to be denied. Because when you think about it, the governor cannot sign a bill. He's got 10 days to sign a bill, and then it automatically goes into effect if he doesn't sign it. That's usually the default. Like if this person doesn't take action, it's automatically approved. So the fact that they decided that in this one case, if the Department of Health doesn't take action in 60 days, it's automatically denied, shows exactly what their plan is in this case. They're planning on saying the Department of Health is just going to sit on it. It's going to be denied, and we're going to force the clinic to close. So now we've got to keep an eye on that, and I think there'll be some action on that coming up, and we'll talk about it when it happens.
Okay. So that's Dayton. What's happening in Toledo?
So in Toledo, we got a really great ruling out of the judge right before Kasich signed the budget. And I think we talked about it in our last podcast.
Talked about that last time.
So the judge ruled that the clinic can stay open because the Department of Health didn't have the right to say, no, we're going to close the clinic because of the transfer agreement. Of course, Attorney General Mike DeWine's office then appealed that ruling. So now it's going to go into the next step. We'll figure out what happens there. It took almost a year, I think, for the case to be ruled on the first time. So I'm not expecting us to have an update next week. But in the meantime, because we never know what the courts are going to do, we've been starting a campaign slowly and are going to kick it off, in the next couple of weeks to tell ProMedica, which is the local hospital that can sign a transfer agreement, to sign a transfer agreement. That is their duty to make sure that women in their community have access to safe and legal abortion care. And by not signing a transfer agreement, they are the organization standing in the way of women having safe and legal abortion care. Yeah. So we've been doing some work with some grassroots activists up there. And then the Toledo Blade came in actually this week with an editorial column by one of their editors, and actually wrote an amazing editorial column on why ProMedica must provide a transfer agreement. That is actually their moral duty for the people of Toledo to sign a transfer agreement, and that if they actually care about making sure that the people of the Toledo area, actually most of Northwest Ohio in general, have access to high quality medical care, they will sign this transfer agreement. And of course, ProMedica came back with we want to stay out of the debate. And so by staying out of it, we're staying neutral, which is the biggest load of crap I've ever heard. By staying out of it, you are forcing a clinic to close. That is absolutely not staying neutral. So we're going to keep pushing. There'll be an online action that people can take from home. If you want to help actually collect petition signatures in the Toledo area, there's a training in Toledo on the 24th of August. And then Toledo Pride is actually the 29th of August. Toledo does their Pride at the end of the year, end of the summer. So both of those events are coming up. If you want more information about that, just email us at volunteer@prochoiceohio.org, and we will definitely hook you up with the information about both of those events in Toledo to get involved and really start pushing on ProMedica to do what they need to do to protect access.
It's volunteer@prochoiceohio.org.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And if you're in my neck of the woods, which is central and southern Ohio, we're also having a happy hour / training to talk about, all the terrible things that the legislature did and how we're going to move forward. So we're having a happy hour here in the office in Columbus. That's going to be next Tuesday, the 11th, August 11th, from 6 to 8 p.m., 61 Jefferson Avenue, Columbus, Ohio. And then the next Thursday, what's today? Wednesday. So a week from tomorrow. I know.
What day is it this week? Yeah.
What day is it? So next Thursday, August 13th, again from 6 to 8 p.m., we're going to have an open house in Cincinnati, and it's going to be at the Goodfellas in Over the Rhine. It's 1211 Main Street, I believe. 1211 Main Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, but it's the Goodfellas in Over the Rhine, and we'll be on the 3rd floor. Pizza's on us, drinks are on you, and we'll be raffling off movie tickets. So yay! So come out, have a good time. I look forward to seeing you all there.
Yeah, and one more update too. The rescheduled Cleveland Pride, because Cleveland Pride was rained and stormed out in June. The rescheduled Cleveland Pride is this weekend, this Saturday. And so if you want to help out there and volunteer, again, just volunteer at prochoiceohio.org, and we'll hook you up with Annie, who is in our Cleveland office, so doesn't join us for these. And she'll get in touch with you and get you hooked up with that.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so then the last thing for this episode is the return of the Title IX Sports Report. The first thing we have to talk about is Ronda Rousey.
I found out about today.
I didn't see it. I've read about it, but I didn't actually watch
30-second knockout.
Yes.
Just amazing. To see how fast this fight went. She's on the cover of Sports Illustrated a couple weeks ago too. Amazing breakout mixed martial arts. She's a boxer, doing an amazing job. So to see a woman making headlines as a boxer is really cool.
Yeah.
Also, the NFL has hired their first female coach, Jen Walter, the Arizona Cardinals. She's an assistant coach. And what I've heard about her from the guys on PTI,
I love that show though. It's so funny.
Yeah. I listened to it as a podcast, and they were talking about her apparently has a degree in psychology.
A PhD. She's actually a doctor.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and is amazing and has played football, and not on a women's team, on a men's team. So,
where did she play on a men's team?
I'm not sure. It was somewhere in college, maybe in high school, but brains and brawn for the Arizona Cardinals. So that is that's pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
Well, and if we missed it earlier this year, the NBA hired their first one too. Becky Hammon is an assistant for this first. Right. She actually was the head coach for the summer league. So she actually was in charge of their summer league team this year too. So that was pretty amazing. And they did a really good job. I didn't see the final. I just saw some coverage in the middle of their tournaments, but they were rolling straight through, and it was pretty cool to see too.
So big news for women in the world of coaching. And then the last thing we've got is just despicable billboard by a radio station up in Toledo making fun of Caitlyn Jenner. It's the station is Star 105. Don't listen to this horrible radio station. But so they put up a billboard of their
morning
DJ. DJ.
He's
a Christian man.
Yeah.
Who said ridiculous homophobic things all over the radio.
Yes.
So a Christian man.
Yeah, exactly.
In a dress, in a wig, and asking people to
transition
to their radio station.
Yes.
And please don't call me Caitlyn is what the billboard says.
Yes.
So making fun of Caitlyn Jenner, who is an athlete, which is why this is in the Title IX Sports Report. And so this station has been, called out by many organizations, including, I believe, Equality Ohio.
Yeah, Equality Toledo. Yep. And
the rumors are that this billboard will be taken down. Such a shameful stunt.
Yeah.
So don't make fun of Caitlyn Jenner.
No.
Yeah. Well, and just, I mean, again, like we're talking about Patman, think before you act. Like,
yes.
Something that sounds funny in your head in the middle of the night may not be the best thing to shove on a billboard. And anytime you take a class of people and use them as the butt of your joke is never okay. So just stop. Just stop.
No. I was going to say, they showed like a video, as the Upworthy video of the little children seeing first Bruce Jenner before she transitioned, and then now Caitlyn Jenner, and just getting their thoughts on it. And basically the kids were just like, oh, well, if that's who she really is, then she should just be who she's going to be. And I see a lot of people who, for whatever reason, don't understand it, and then they say really, degrading things like, well, she was born, or they say he was born Bruce, so I'm going to call him Bruce, or that's what his mom named him, whatever. But my whole thing is, even if it's hard for you to understand, because even as an ally myself, I have conversations, with other people who are in the LGBT community and ask them questions but I want to understand. So I ask out of pure ignorance to try to understand it. But at the same time, even if you don't understand it, it's just a matter of respect. If I'm telling you that this is who I am as a person, this is what I want to be called, then it doesn't matter what you think I should be doing. Just respect me as a person and call me what I want to be called. And I mean, you don't have to dig deeper further into it than that. Just call someone what they want to be called and leave it at that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And as Caitlyn Jenner herself said at the ESPYs, she's okay with getting picked on because she was the star quarterback of her high school football team. So maybe if she's ever in Toledo, she'll come to the station and kick this guy's ass. So,
really?
For real.
Okay. Yeah. So that's as good of a note as ever to end on. And we'll see you guys real soon. So
bye.